Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy Melanated Mastery here with another book review video. I read this book probably like a little over 3 months ago. It's called The Dark Ages by Martin J. Dougherty. Very, 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 very good book, especially if you want to know about like how Christianity started. I guess some of the wars between different religions, right? uh, the different dynasties that existed back then when it comes to Caucasian people. A lot of the cultures that they claim is, cultures like the Anglo-Saxons, right? The Greeks, the Romans, I guess the quote unquote Britons, things of that nature, right? That's what they like to claim a lot in history, right? The Spaniards, right? The conquistadors, which are really Moors, right? And I think one of the things you got to understand when you read this is that a lot of the cultures that they claim were very populated with a lot of Moors, but they'll never show that, right? So when you read this book, um, it's mostly pictures of, Europeans and Asians, right? This is another one of those books that's very heavily pictured, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's very visual. Um, that's what I liked about it. It gave a lot of pictures and a lot of paintings that artists drew based on the information that was given to them, and then they went and confirmed it with the people that gave them that information. Right, being I guess older people where this information was passed down to. Right, so yeah, this picture, this book is very visual. And their picture on every page, really. But yeah, this talks about the Merovingian dynasty. You can see the notes that I left in this book. It's a very good book. Uh, but yeah, this book talks about the Merovingian dynasty, which, if you don't know what the Merovingian dynasty is or supposedly is that the Merovingian dynasty is supposedly Jesus's bloodline that he left after he passed away, because in his book it actually talks about how he had kids, and the kids that he had end up being the bloodline, or the bloodline that spread across the world, that ended up ruling most of the world to this day, right? Um, a lot of the rich people in the world, right? These families that control the world are supposedly have ties to these bloodlines, right? One of them being the Merovingian. And in his book, it mentions how Charles Martel was a European, actually a war general, that he fought against the Moors in this battle, which was known as the Battle of Tours, or Tours, or you know, however you want to pronounce it, is Tours, right? And that battle became known as the only, well, not the only, but one of the first and one of the biggest battles where the Europeans were able to fight off the Moors from conquering Europe. Because if you know anything about the Moors, you know that um, there's this guy named Abdi ar-Rahman, right? And he was a Moor, and he was a part of the what they call the I want to say Abbasid dynasty. It might be the Umayyad dynasty, but they talk about those Islamic dynasties in this book, right? Those Moorish dynasties in this book that were existing at the same time as the Caucasian dynasties, being the Merovingians, right? But it talks about how Charles Martel actually defeated Abdi ar-Rahman, right? Which was supposed to be one of the greatest, noblest Moorish conquerors in history, right? Abdi ar-Rahman, obviously his parents were of a royal bloodline, right? He ended up fleeing, and he ended up being a war general in order to get excuse me, in order to get his popularity back, for lack of a better term, his infamy, or his not really infamy, because that's more of a negative term, but his royalty back, right? In order to be noticed as the king that he was and the royalty that he believed that himself was, right? But it talks about that in his book. The Battle of Troy is a very notorious battle. Uh, and a lot of people died during that battle. Rest in peace to those people. Rest in power to those people. And it talks about that battle in here. This book mentions the word more probably one or two times, not more than two times. I can guarantee that. But this book, just to give you a little background on, how I guess the author Mark J. Dougherty views history. Yeah, this book only mentions the Moors like two times because they have to. They have to let people know that, because you gotta understand, as Caucasian people, when they speak about the Moors, right? They think that people are going to think based on the information that they put out there. They think that people are going to believe that the Moors were, heavily Caucasian, and that the Moors were Islamic, and that the Islamic Moors were more lighter skin, right? Because that's what all the pictures on the internet portray the Moors as, right? So that's why I guess this author is so comfortable with putting that, word in the book, right? Because because I'm guessing he's thinking like, and he might actually believe that most of the Moors weren't even, melanated people, or weren't even darker skinned people. I mean, I doubt that that's what he really believes, but I mean, you gotta understand, some white people are indoctrinated as well. But the book, that's besides the point, right? The book brings up, the Battle of the Tours, which was a very famous battle. There's actually a picture in this book, right, that shows melanated people in that battle. It's supposed to be a picture of Abdi Rahman. As a matter of fact, actually, my profile picture on YouTube is supposedly a picture of Abdi Rahman and the Moors. And in that picture, you can see Moors wearing, the headwear, right? And I believe fezzes as well, because fezzes was a very popular thing during the medieval times, right? But I'm trying to see if I can find this picture real quick. Definitely talks about the Merovingian dynasty and how that dynasty is supposed to be part of Jesus. Talks about the Carolingian dynasty, which came either before or after the Merovingian dynasty. Talks about the Umayyad dynasty. Talks about the Abbasid dynasty, or Abbasid dynasty, however you want to pronounce it, right? It talks about all these dynasties that ruled during what we call now medieval times. And I definitely recommend this book. And another thing, right, that this book brings up a lot is the fact that so for those that don't know, Iberia was the term that the Moors described Spain as in the medieval times, right? So in the medieval times, Spain, it wasn't called Spain, right? It was called Iberia. It was called the Peninsula of Iberia. But here it is right here. So it's crazy. Yeah, they were wearing I guess fez like headwear, right? So right here, I don't know if you can see, let me see. Yeah, so right there, it shows him. You can clearly see that him and the people that he ruled over and that fought for him were melanated people. And this actual page talks about the Battle of Tours and how Abdi Rahman tried to raid and conquer Europe at the time and spread Islam over Europe, right? Because he believed that Islam was a higher God religion, right? But yeah, but where I was going was that this book also talks about the Christians and the Knights Templar, right? So when you study history, you run into a lot of books like this book and the book by Jose Pimienta Bay, which was called Othello's Children in the New World, right? Othello being a Moorish general at the time. Those books bring up the what's the name for it? I'm drawing a blank right now. Give me a second. The the Knights Templar. That's what. So those books bring up the Knights Templar, and in this book it refers to the Knights Templar as obviously Caucasians, right? In Othello's Children in the New World, that book refers to, excuse me, that book refers to the Knights Templar as the Moors that supposedly had these magical powers, right, over life, and that they could, do these magical things that you see in the movies today. And in my last video, I talked about how I really believe that, those magic powers still exist. People still utilize them. It's just suppressed a lot, right? But it talks about the Knights Templar, how they became the richest, and they took all the treasures, and they hid them, and it was later found, and it was used to uh, finance the biggest banks in the world today, right? And one of the legends about it, because I read this in another book that I need to do a book review on. There's a book called The Lost Treasures out there, right? And in that book, it talks about how the Ark of the Covenant from the Bible, right, which supposedly had these uh, magic powers, right, to draw energy and be able to do all these magical things that the prophets used it for, right? It talks about how the Ark of the Covenant was basically taken by the Knights Templar, right? And that the Knights Templar, that was one of the main reasons that the Knights Templar had so much power at that time, because they contained, well, not contained, but they had possession. Man, I said that word weird. They had possession of the Ark of the Covenant. And it was said that whoever had possession of the Ark of the Covenant um, was seen as a great ruler at that time, right? So it talks about that in this book as well. Talks about what we call today the Vikings, but back then they weren't actually called Vikings; they were called Norsemen, right? Norse, right? And it talks about how the areas like I guess Northern Europe, like uh, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's like Finland, Ireland, all those Northern European areas, those islands and stuff like that. It talks about how the Norsemen ruled at the time, and how the Norsemen actually had a bloodline that was tied to the Queen of England, right? Talks about all those different bloodlines. Where I was going though was that the Christians, right? The Christian bloodline talks about the old Romans, right? And the Greeks and how they ruled. And it teaches you how Christianity got spreaded around the world. It talks about the Inquisition, right? So the Inquisition was basically a group of people, which were mainly, Romans and Greeks, which went around and they killed anybody who believed in anything other than the Holy Trinity, right? And in this book, it talks about the opposition to the Holy Trinity, which comes from this guy. I can't remember his name, but it comes from a guy that starts with an A, I believe. And that guy, he didn't believe in the Holy Trinity. He didn't believe that Jesus was quote unquote Jesus, right? Was the Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit, right? He didn't believe that's what Jesus was, right? He believed that since Jesus came from God, that he was subject to God, right? And that everything after him was subject to God, right? He didn't necessarily believe that Jesus was God, right? He just thought that that Jesus was a vessel that God was living through, but that Jesus still came from God, right? He wasn't necessarily God in the flesh, right? The creator in the flesh. So that belief that this guy, I want to say his name is like Arium or Arius. because I think the followers that came after him that believed in the same thing that he did were called like the Arius believers, and that's what made the Inquisition want to kill anybody that didn't agree with the Holy Trinity. But anyways, that's beside the point. But yeah, he believed that God, or that Jesus was subject to God, and that belief ended uh, by him being killed. Right, he became what they call a martyr, right, or martyr, however you want to pronounce it. But that created this big war where you got these Christians killing each other, which were mostly Caucasians, right? A lot of Christians were, Caucasian at the time of the medieval time, and it resulted in a lot of these wars where you got all these different beliefs going around. You got some people believing that Jesus was, the Holy Trinity, and then you got some people believing that he wasn't, and you got some people not believing any of it, and you just got these different branches of spirituality, right? But what happened was you come across in this book, it teaches you about the Council of Nicaea, right? Which in this book, it refers to the Council of Nicaea that was put together by this guy named Constantine, right? Emperor Constantine. He was a great, supposedly a great European war general as well. And during his reign, he seen the distortion or the difference in the belief of this religion. Now, when you read this book at the time, you have to understand that religion wasn't necessarily more based on spirituality. It was, excuse my phone, but religion wasn't necessarily based on spirituality. It was based on political power, right? Political and social status. So these people, right, at the time would take on Christianity as a way to obtain political and social power. It wasn't about whether you believed in Jesus or you believed in any of those stories that they make up in the Bible, or not necessarily make up, right, but that they put for you to believe in the Bible, right? It was more of, okay, if I become a high priest, I can have a ruling, or I can reign over this particular area in the world, right? So I'm going to convert so I can, get that power. And what Emperor Constantine did was he also converted to Christianity, right? And he took on a lot of that power because he conquered a lot of territories, and he realized that if he converted to Christianity, he would gain a lot more influence on the people at the time. So he took on that power, and he seen all the differences in the beliefs. So what he did was he called together this, what they now call the Council of Nicaea, right? And he basically pulled them together and said, okay, we all need to come together on this belief that, God is the Holy Trinity, and, or not God is the Holy Trinity, but that the Holy Trinity exists, and that, everybody needs to come, and we need to have these rules and boundaries so that everybody can come together with, right? So everybody can have that understanding and have a unity, right? So he called together all these, priests and all these, the royal bloodlines, right? Even, kings and queens and stuff like that. They came together because they were all Christians, and that's one of the reasons they held those political powers. So they all came together, and they put this belief down, which was the main aspect of it was the Holy Trinity. And they sent out the Inquisition to go around and kill anybody who didn't believe in that, so that everybody could believe in the same thing and everybody could be in unity, because they all had the same beliefs, and everybody was just more of the same people. Like-minded people, they tend to be friends with each other, right? A lot more easier. And when that happened, that's how you get today, where a lot of the world today, I think it's like over 2 billion people. I think it's like over 5 billion people today, but a lot of the world is Christian, right? And the Inquisition was one of the main reasons for that. And this book goes into the Inquisition and how all that started, Council Nicaea, Emperor Constantine, and everything. But yeah, this book goes over a lot. I definitely recommend this book. Oh, and the Dark Ages. So the Dark Ages, what that means is the ages where a lot of Europeans, they didn't have a lot of knowledge, right? They were very barbaric and barbarious, meaning that they killed each other over, some of the dumbest things, and that they weren't really civilized. So that's why they called it the Dark Ages, because that was the age where no knowledge was put around in Europe. So definitely recommend this book if you want to learn how Christianity started and how it got spread around the world. The different dynasties, which is a big part of history, how even their sons and daughters today rule the world, Merovingian dynasty being, I think, one of the most famous dynasties because of the, I don't want to say myth, but because of the story that their bloodline is connected to Jesus from his kids, right? The Battle of Tours, definitely think that's a big point in this book that, especially melanated people need to understand. Charles Martel, Emperor Constantine. I keep going. There's probably stories in this book that I didn't, remember to bring up, but definitely recommend this. Talks about the Romans, the Greeks. Definitely recommend this book. It's a great book. I don't know if Martin J. Dougherty has any other books, but if he does, based on history, I would definitely get it. But yeah. One last thing before I get off of here that I wanted to bring up was the fact that the Knights Templar, I really believe, based on what I read, that the Knights Templar is responsible for the Jedi Knight storyline. And the Jedi Knights, I mean, being the Star Wars storyline, right? Obviously, I think a lot of it comes from the Terra papers from what's his name, Morning Sky. I think it's like Robert Morning Sky, but I think the actual the group, the Jedi Knights, I think that actually comes from the Knights Templar, because is it a coincidence or not that the Jedi Knights kind of sounds like, the Knights Templar, and that the storyline is kind of similar to the Knights Templar, because if you watch Star Wars, you see that you have you got the people, or the Jedi Knights supposedly control the Force, right? And what is the Force? May the Force be with you. The Force is like this magical power that, only the Jedis could control, right? And the Siths, right? Because the Siths is supposed to be the dark side, and Jedi is supposed to be like the light and the enlightenment, right? But that sounds a lot like the stories about the Knights Templar, how they were magical people who can control these magic powers, right? One of the reasons why I believe that Star Wars is based off the Knights Templar, at least the most famous part of Star Wars being the Jedi's, was based off the Knights Templar. And even in the third movie, right, or not the third movie, but the third episode of the movies, which I believe was called the Revenge of the Sith, you come to realize that what happens. So what's the turning point where Darth Vader comes in the movie, right? It happens when he kills Samuel L. Jackson in the movie, right? Where he kills the brother, the Moor, right? And that just alludes to the fact that, and Samuel Jackson was actually in that movie one of the elders of the council, right? He made a lot of he helped influence a lot of the decisions of the Jedi's. And it's kind of ironic that, he ended up being killed, and that led to, him going to the dark side, or, him becoming Darth Vader, right? And that just alludes to the fact that, the Knights Templar were Moors. But I definitely think that a lot of that, a lot of those movies allude to the fact that the Knights Templar were Moors, and just every the information about the Knights Templar, right? The history of the Knights Templar, but they will never say it in the movie. But everything the movie talks about is very, very similar to the Knights Templar, the stories about the Knights Templar. So I would definitely keep that in mind. I'll definitely go rewatch those movies after you would read this book, because it like, I watched those movies after I read this. I'm like, this is too close to the Knights Templar storyline, right? But it's kind of ironic because I seen a girl dress up for Halloween, right, as one of the Knights Templar, and I didn't ask her, but I didn't understand that. I don't think she understood the history, the real history behind the Knights Templar. So I'm seeing this, and she was kind of like an Asian person, and I'm seeing this Asian person dressed up as a Knights Templar. I'm like, does she even know like what's that? What that's connected to? And it's really fun to see. But that's my book review on the Dark Ages by Marj Dougherty. I definitely recommend it. It's not that big of a book. It's probably like 150 pages. Um, all the pages, damn near all the pages have pictures on them, so I definitely recommend it. It's your boy Melody Mastery. I made this book review long, but it's a lot of good information in this book. I definitely recommend it, and I'll catch y'all next time. Y'all be in power, all right?